LinkedIn Echo Chamber. This is ML's like Team Spirit. Today we've got Dan with us. Dan, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Busy day, but can't complain.
Oh, thanks for fitting us in, Dan. So look, Dan, we connected via LinkedIn a long time ago when you invited me to participate in your community. I'm sad to say I was super busy at that time, but your business has gone from strength to strength. So although I couldn't help you at that moment, you're now here to help me out. So, dude, I really appreciate it. Thank you for sparing the time.
Of course.
Dan, the background to this is that you have an AI platform. I'm going to have you explain it in a moment. But what I was wanting to speak to you about is I've begun to notice that I think the world is the world of AI users, I should say, that subset of the world, are kind of becoming more aware of the fact that, you know, different GPTs having different capabilities. So, for example, some people would talk about different ones as a coding partner and say stronger than this one. I would be content marketers would say to me, I believe, or I've heard that GPT is quite good at, you know, building ideas, generating ideas, but that Claude has more natural writing capabilities. So there's this kind of, at least in my echo chamber, you know, like at the beginnings of people starting to recognize this, and then you've got a product in this space, which is why I've invited you to speak to me today. So I would like to do two things to kick this off. Could you give me a 60-second intro, actually, tell everyone what you've been doing and where you've been doing it, and then just move into, you know, the name of your product and the inspiration for it, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so very quick personal background. So I did engineering originally in a pro college, then did PhD work in pro college as well. Started the company a couple of years ago. And basically what we're doing, I guess the quick answer is we send each prompt to the best LLM, accounting for user preferences for quality, speed, and cost. But underneath that platform, there's really three layers. The first thing is single sign-on, so getting access to all models, all providers with a single unified interface and a single API key. That's the kind of universal API side of things. We then have rigorous benchmarking to compare different models and providers in terms of speed, quality, and cost, and also, you know, benchmark different prompts and so on with different models. And then on top of that, the cherry on top really is then the router that uses the single sign-on to all models and providers, uses the benchmarking tooling to then really know which model and provider to send each prompt to get better speed, cost, and quality performance with your LLM applications. So that's what we're doing in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you've got a platform there sending the prompt off to the best model according to some user criteria. And it sounded like I've already got a new idea. So it sounded like what you said there when you introduced it. The single sign-on and the model management is the kind of thing that would help developers and engineers not have to miss you manage that on behalf of the consumer, so that in-house devs don't have to manage which models do I point at. There's a new model coming out, therefore we have to change all our code. So you've got that side is easier for the development community. And then the rest of the product is just about sending the prompt off to the right place. So if people are trying to manage budget and quality and some of those things, your platform does this as well.
Exactly. And actually we have customers that are using different subsets of these features. So there's some people for whom the single sign-on is sufficient, and that's all they need. They just don't want to keep up with all the different API keys, the different API formats and so on, and that just solves the problem for them. There's others where the benchmarking is enough and they can then select the single model to use. And then for people where they really want to take better control of the cost and speed, the routing can then give them an edge as well. And this is particularly for large-scale enterprise deployments we've found since launching a few weeks ago. We're obviously learning a lot as we've launched. We're talking to lots and lots of prospective users and lots of inbound and trying to kind of segment the market into kind of the ICPs that fit into these different buckets, basically. So still learning, but this is kind of what we're finding so far.
Well, let's dig into these kind of user preferences in terms of sending the prompt off. So let's list them. So you said the cost, like a quality element, and a responsiveness. It's kind of a speed part, is it? What I'd love to do for each is sort of try and pick out, you know, let's say you wanted to optimize just one of those at a time. What would be the kind of use case you would expect? And you know, what's the kind of downside, I suppose, like of it going wrong? So cost one's bleeding obvious, Dan. I presume you're going to say like a high throughput use case that consumes a lot of tokens cost you $1 million a week when you weren't expecting it. So I'm going to do the easy one with you. Sort of step through these just so people can appreciate the situation for each.
So I mean, one of the really obvious ones is actually speed to start off with, where you can think of anything that requires real-time human interaction is where speed really becomes important. So for example, we're working with one company that's doing AI sales leads, but like AI sales employees, basically. So they do like a phone call, and
Agents.
it's an AI, agents. That's it.
Yeah.
Sales agent. So basically, you have an AI agent behind the call that's actually having the conversation with the customer. And obviously, like if you receive a phone call and it's taking 5 seconds to receive a response, that's annoying. And people say, "Hello, is anybody there?" And you need a really quick response. So that's one example. A co-pilot is another good example for speed, where you're typing in your document and you want to get auto completion, or you're typing your code and you want to get suggestions. Unless it's really responsive, it's useless. So speed is kind of anything with a human in the loop, interacting with it in real time. And there's lots of examples of that. Cost really, I guess cost is more where the actual LLM application is not so complex or like so mission critical that like maybe you're doing like a lot of conversations with like, support. Maybe there's loads of people on a chatbot and you're trying to address like, customer questions and take them down the kind of conventional chatbot. And the Gen AI aspect is making things cost a lot more than it did. And you can afford to have a smaller, cheaper model because the thing it's doing isn't that complicated. And it's large volume, relatively simple task, where the cost often is the metric that people really want to optimize for. But what I would say is that quality remains the most important, and particularly where people are trying to push the limits of what LLMs can do. There are quite a lot of situations where the economic impact of the LLM working well improves the finances of the business on like a different order of magnitude than the runtime costs of the LLM itself. So in those cases, like that, there's some anecdotal examples probably that I can't share exactly, but like, you can imagine a company where like the agent is helping to save, maybe billions of dollars by doing some like really deep optimization, and like the running of the LLM is costing millions of dollars. And it doesn't matter if it's like 3 times cheaper. Like, yeah, great, going from 3 million a month to 1 million a month sounds amazing to me and you, but to a company that's like trying to squeeze every ounce of performance because what that agent is doing is like massively helping the revenue of the company, then I guess what we've found is that the quality of the LLMs has a disproportionate importance compared to the cost and speed. And that's not a problem. I mean, because the benchmarking tooling that we've built enables, iteration quickly to improve the quality. But I would say that people that really care about cost and speed are a subset of the user base. And we have a clear idea of who they are, and that's who the router can help. But the quality remains the top of the list, I guess. That's kind of my quick rundown of those 3, I suppose.
Okay. On the cost side, just because I don't know the answer, and I think you will know the answer, look, ChatGPT came out. I took a free account. When I had to pay $20 a month, I started, and then when they upgraded the product, so that the free version again was nearly the equivalent of the $20 one, I cancelled.
Yeah.
So there must be millions of people doing that one.
The
question I don't know the answer to though is on the cost side, on relative costs, without naming a particular provider or model. How kind of what kind of, how different are they? So if you took the cheapest and the most expensive, like what factor is the cost per token or whatever it is?
It can get up to like 1,000 or so, but at 100 is pretty common. So I mean, we also can name providers because I mean it's all public. Like, Anthropic and OpenAI are the most expensive typically. I think it's cheaper now, but Anthropic Claude Opus at one point was like $75 per million output tokens or something, and $15 per, I've forgotten which way around it was now, but so that's an example of 20, that's like, let's say $75 per token it was one of the metrics Opus had at least a few months ago. And then you look at, let's say, Deep Infra or Fireworks AI or Octo AI with like, the latest Llama 3 model, that's 50 cents per million tokens. So that's 150 times cheaper. So it can be basically 2 orders of magnitude. It doesn't go much more than that. But obviously, as we're seeing, I think it is a race to the bottom. So GPT-4o is half the price and slightly better quality than GPT-4 in some areas, and also faster. So if that's a trend to go by, and I think there are lots of reasons to think that hardware will keep getting a lot better, and they will keep getting a lot faster and cheaper. There's research that shows that's the way things are going, like without any doubt. So that it will keep going down. But at the moment, basically 100 is roughly the order of magnitude you can see.
So let's zoom in on the quality part, because you said that's kind of disproportionately important, or people are very keen that is, the number one factor.
Yeah.
So you've built something to assist with this. So you call it the router. It's the thing when a user sends in a prompt, Unify have got a way of directing that query to the most effective LLM. And this is a bit like the bit that when a user is on the desktop, jumping between a GPT or Claude, going like, I'm going to have an idea, or I'm going to create some content. They're just flipping between stuff. You've come up with a more automatic means. So you can either tell us your secret source or not, or generalized. But what have you got there then that's interpreting that query and making sure it's directed to the highest performing LLM for that query type?
Sure. So the way the router works, and actually we explain this in a Hacker News post, so it's not something we're secretive about at all. And actually, there's a blog post coming out soon as well. Basically, we have a large language model. It's like a BERT style model that takes in the prompt and it takes in a latent representation of the model, and it just predicts how good would this model be at responding to this prompt. And we train that using a large-ish training data of about 100,000 examples from the Open Hermes data set, using GPT-4 as a judge. So we use LLMs to judge the responses of all the different models. We train a model with that, and then what we do when the prompt comes in is we predict ahead of time how good are each of these likely to be at responding to this, and then we send it to the most appropriate model. Now that can indeed, as you say, improve the quality, particularly when you have the models like OpenAI and Anthropic, so you have like GPT-4 and Claude Opus, etc. And then you can end up kind of sending prompts that are more coding based to maybe Opus, ones that are more generative based to GPT-4 or whatever. So you can actually get an improvement in quality. But to be honest, the router is mainly useful for improving the speed and the cost. Like the main thing you can really get with that is maintaining that high quality of your GPT-4 and your Opus kind of models, and maintaining that quality, but just getting it much, much cheaper. Now, when it comes to improving quality, the main tools we've built that enables that are these benchmarking tools that are actually in like very early beta right now, and we'll have public docs for them soon, where basically you can very quickly iterate on your system prompt. So the prompt that's defining the role of the LLM and the kind of thing that stays fixed and it's not the variable that you pass in. So iterating very quickly on the system prompt, enabling you to work out which test cases passed, which failed for different versions of that system prompt, which of the input prompts like it did well on and did badly on, and like just making it very easy to close that loop very quickly so you can boost the performance with the controllable variables, which is the system prompt basically. So this is kind of where the quality improvement comes from. So yeah, the router is more about the cost and speed aspect, to be honest. And this actually, to be honest, has been one of the learnings since launching. Like, I think, the router is something that we've got deployed and is useful, but we've learned actually to get really good routing, you need really good benchmarking first. And that's why we've kind of doubled down onto this area over the last few weeks. Yeah.
Speaking of the benchmarking, we'll use a hashtag ad. So audience, unified.ai, you can see an LLM battle in action. So Dan, I promise you I did research, and you can go off here and see some LLMs arguing and just discussing the quality of each other's responses. It's super awesome to see.
Exactly.
So yeah, you found a scalable way to do that. Hey Dan, look, we're coming closer to time. Thanks for taking us through all this. I would love to know from your standpoint. I know you're early stage and you're growing, but you've received investment, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I would love to know, for anyone coming across this video, what would be, say, two, if you had to pick two, you called them ICPs earlier, like what would be two personas that you believe should be like, looking at what you've built, what would they be doing, who would they be, and what kind of project would they be working on?
So to be honest, we've found that typically people find what we've built most useful once they've already built their MVP typically. So if you're literally just building the very, very first version of something, like you can often just hack something together with OpenAI or GPT-4 or something. So particularly people that have built their product, they have some kind of product market fit and they're starting to scale it. As soon as you start to scale, this is when cost and speed start to become more important. And actually, I think most of the companies that are interested in the routing have been large enterprises. Like there's a disproportionate number of big companies deploying things at massive scale that want to get a 15% reduction in cost or whatever, or things to be faster. So that's kind of one persona, like large scale deployment, routing, save on speed and cost. The quality boosting side and the benchmarking side is really anybody that's building an LLM system that is pushing the bounds of what these LLMs can do. If you can solve the task in a zero-shot manner with a simple prompt, then then that's fine. But if you're like building an agentic workflow with sub-agents and hierarchical setups and tool use, and you're like iterating on the system prompt and just trying to get it to work, that's when the benchmarking tooling can be really helpful. So these are like two different personas, I would say.
Good, Dan. Well, look, we've just about hit time, Dan. So thanks for taking us through that. Thanks for your insights, and congratulations on your business. Awesome stuff. Ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Team Spirit.